one of the most important topics facing our community at this time. Just by being here, you are making an investment in the future of our children. Once, as Jerry said, my name is Patricia Gaston. I'm a proud parent of a 4-year-old who's been going to KB Richardson for the last 2 years in the early education program. I am very, very, very excited about the program. I was last year, he was here half a day last year, and he's here full day this year. He has learned so much, and I wish I could just tell every parent, anyone who has children or pregnant, Head Start is the way to go. It really is. Because I've seen so much growth in Tristan over the last 2 years. I mean, I do as much as I can as a parent, but we still all need a little help when it comes to our kids. And this is not a glorified daycare, this is an education, this is a school. And they actually learn. They learn everything. A lot of things they have to take them through life. Social skills, emotional, things and all that. And I'm very, very happy. He is my only child, and he is the light of my life. And we always have conversations about how much we love each other. Just told me this morning how much we love him. But I just want to say, there's really not enough words that can be said about how important the teachers that are here, the para-teachers, everybody that's in this school and in the Head Start program, they play an intricate part in the growth of every child. It is very, very important. And I'd like to take a couple seconds to recognize my son's teachers who have been wonderful. It's like, I'm a single parent, but it has just been a wonderful experience dealing with his teachers from last year, Miss Shelley and Miss Terry from last year, and this year Miss Perry and Miss Terry, Miss Cheryl. I'll be Terry this time. But I'm telling you, I know there are other great teachers in this school, but those teachers right now that I've just mentioned, Miss Cheryl and Miss Terry, top notch. Now, when let's see here. I want to take a little time to recognize some people who have joined us this evening. Ms. Melissa Robinson, she is the chair of the Kansas City Public School Board. Ms. Patty Cure, she is the chair of the and any other board members, would you please stand and be recognized, please? Thank you so much for coming.
Okay, the first segment that we're going to go through tonight is about nurturing young minds. And I'd like to introduce our two, they're not panelists, it's conversationalists who are going to step up here and have a conversation with you. The first is Deidre Anderson, who many of you may know from St. Mark's and United City Services. Deidre's been in the community for quite a while, a trusted colleague and a friend. Also, we have Dr. Giovanna Ross, who's with the Metropolitan Council on Learning, formerly with UMKC Institute for Human Development. Both have been involved in the early learning programs. They know public education, and they will provide us with some tremendous information this evening. And I believe Dr. Ross, you're starting, should be a hand helping us right now.
Well, thank you, and good evening, and thank you so much for inviting me to be here. And thank you so much for the introduction that you gave, because you really set the stage for what it is that Deidre and I are talking about, is that important aspect of relationships within early learning. You talked about, we heard our parent talk about how important her teachers are and how amazing they did. And then she also talked about the relationship that she has with her son and the conversations that they're having around how much I love you, Mom, and how much growth she's seen in the 2 years that her son has been here. But what I love the most is that she said, you know, I can do some of these things, but we all need help. And so when we think about early learning, we're really thinking about how are we coming together to work as a team to best help the development of the children in our care. Whether I'm a parent, I'm a teacher, I'm a community member, what are we all doing to come together to help early learning within our community? And the reason we want to focus on that is that early learning is so important because there are only, when I say only, there are only approximately 2,000 days from the time the child is born until they enter our kindergarten doors. And that's a pretty short time when we really think about it. But during that time, in those first 2,000 days, it's a small part of their lifetime. But from when they're born until their first birthday, 25% of their brain is developed. By the time they turn 1, 70% of their brain. And by the time they move on to kindergarten, 92% of their brain has developed. And what that means when we talk about, well, what do you mean their brain is developed? We're still developing as adults. What that means is that these connections and the fibers that are connecting in our brains are strengthened each year within those first 5 years of life to help our information processing as we're going back and forth between our hemispheres and thinking about what's going on. The other piece that we have to consider in that development is what's called white matter. And I'm not going to go deep into science, but it's helpful to understand that as we are having these interactions and relationships with children, we're building the white matter that's helping those transactions between those two sides of our brain to go even faster and more smoothly and connect where they need to go at a more rapid rate so that they are able to adjust to what's happening. So I recently heard somebody say, you know, when I'm interacting with my child or if I'm a teacher in a classroom, a lot of the times people think that's an okay time to interrupt me and ask a question. And what you have to turn and say during these early years is, excuse me, I need you to wait. I'm developing a brain here. Because that's really what we're doing. We're thinking about how do we help the architecture of the brain. And why that's so important in the early learning years is that we can't go back and restructure the architecture of the brain. If we get a child when they're 3 that has experienced a lot of toxic stress and trauma over time, their brain structure might look different than a child that hasn't. And so that hasn't experienced those things. And so we have to think about how do we prevent that. And early learning is one way that we can do that. We can help to set up protections for our brain. And we can also help them, if they come to us with a variety of experiences, to think about how do I best utilize my skills and how do I maybe compensate in some respects. So when we think about brain development, it all goes back to relationships. Relationships that I have with children that are the same age as me, the relationships that I have with teachers, the relationships that I have within the environment. So if we think about, well, why do we need to have early learning centers? I want you to think about the environment of these classrooms that you walked by on your way here and how enriching they are and how appropriate and how child size they are. When I look at my home, I try to create an environment for children that maybe mimic some of that, but I can't go all the ways that our classrooms can in schools. And think about how does the environment welcome the child and feed the child, as well as how are they able to interact back and forth. And so when children are in classrooms, not only are they learning about academics, but these relationship pieces become very fundamental as we start to think about self-regulation and our executive functions. And executive functions is this new buzzword that you might hear. But what you have to think about it is the command center for children. That they're able to really take in and process all this information that's happening. And there's 3 aspects that we want to think about. And the first is memory. So think of it as adults. You might be talking to somebody, they're trying to tell you your phone number, you're on your way somewhere, you're trying to hold that in your brain so that you can, as soon as you get a pen and paper, write down what they're saying and remember what you're supposed to do. That's not a skill that comes naturally. And so children being in early learning are starting to learn to figure out and think about working memory. When they walk in the door and they know, well, when I come in the door, I take off my coat, I take off my backpack, I put it on a hook. Then I go to maybe to our circle time, because that's where we're going to start. They're having to hold those pieces in to remember what it is that comes next. It also is something that they have to work on as they're negotiating relationships and interactions with their friends, to remember, well, the last time I tried to do that with that friend, they didn't really appreciate that. So how could I do that differently this time? So working memory is really important and a skill that is enhanced as they're in early learning programs. The other piece is being able to have inhibition, inhibitionary control, where you're really thinking about, how do I resist impulses? I really want that thing that my friend Deidre has over there, but I cannot just go over and grab it just because it's what I want right now. And when they're in the early learning environment, they're getting those pieces, having to wait just a little bit, waiting until their name is called so that they can go and line up to wash their hands, for example. It's something that we as adults are doing all the time. I really would love on a beautiful day to be able to just go outside and take a walk, but if I'm in the middle of a meeting, it's not very practical for me to do that. And that starts when they are in our early learning classrooms. And the last piece of it is that mental flexibility. So really being able to switch gears when demands and priorities change. And so when I am in a classroom as a child, when I'm trying to build with blocks and they keep falling over, I might have to switch what I was trying to do and rethink how I'm solving that problem to get there. This is that stick-to-itiveness that we see in children. Those children that can face a challenge and then keep coming back to it and really thinking about, how could I do this differently? This is where you start to see them problem solving. And so this all starts in the early years. We see mental flexibility with our infants. When they are trying to get to an object and they can't just reach out, sometimes you'll see them pull on a blanket that object is on, right? And they'll pull it right to them. That's all around mental flexibility. So this idea of creating that air traffic control or our executive functions starts from birth and is really fostered through early learning. And as they are moving through early learning, it becomes a part of what they're doing, not separate from. So when we're thinking about early learning, it is academics, it is social emotional, it is physical development, but it's also thinking about executive functioning and all the skills that I'm going to need that are going to prepare me for the future. And how does all that happen? Is through the relationships in the classroom with teachers. Teachers being intentional, teachers planning, teachers thinking about the unique needs of the children in their classroom and having that give and take conversation with the child to help them move through some of those pieces. But then also within the relationships with their family members and the relationships that those two adults have, the teacher and the family. And I'm going to turn it over to Deidre so she can talk more about how early learning impacts that piece.
Wow, so how do I follow that? Because I'm not the scientist in the room. And I'm not a doctor, let me clarify. That was on a flyer. I will not take credit for something that's not really due. And I'm in a room full of early education experts, and I don't consider myself to be that. But I do consider myself to be someone that has quite a bit of knowledge when it comes to engagement of families and communities, and I bring a different approach to the way that I lead our program. And then I have someone that supports me with the early education expertise that Dr. Rose just talked about. Are there any current or former kindergarten teachers in the room? Okay, so if I can put you on the spot, what's one thing that you wish your kindergartners knew or could do before they came to you that would make your life easier as a kindergarten teacher?
Probably focusing and attention span, having that ability to do that.
So, the social emotional aspect of what happens in an early childhood program is indeed critical. The longer we have a child, the more time we're able to support them and being able to go through routines, rituals, transitions, and just the normal scheme of being in school. I was a K-12 administrator for a long time as the director of at-risk programs in the Hickman Mills School District, and most of the time when I was meeting with families of young children, it was, what was your early childhood experience? And most of the time, they had not had one. And so what I'd say in general, we work very closely with the district. We're not a deliverer of early childhood special ed services. We currently utilize those services at Woodland Elementary, and we are so grateful for that. I would also say that early identification of the warning signs and indicators, the sooner you get involved in supporting children in making sure that they are developing on target, the better those outcomes are going to be later. All of the statistics that Dr. Rose shared basically means that we keep talking about third grade reading scores, but if you think about what you don't learn by age 3, it's basically the equivalent of a third grade reading score that is behind, because you're already 3 years behind your peers. And if you don't have any early childhood experience, you're 5 years behind your peers. From a family engagement standpoint, there's not a better way to engage families than in early childhood. The fact that parents drop off and pick their kids up most of the time every day is that easy way to have even just a casual conversation and be able to get to know families in a way that oftentimes in the K-12 setting as teachers, it's really hard to do, because the older kids get, the more kids you have in your classroom, and unfortunately, sometimes the less involved parents are within that educational process. And a lot of that has to do with, on an average day, I look like an uninvolved parent myself, because I'm doing stuff like this. But I think that as we talk about family engagement, it's important to realize that those skills to be an advocate for your child's education, they start in early childhood, because a rich early childhood program is assessing children just the same way that they are in the K-12 setting. There's parent-teacher conferences, home visits happen. There's a whole lot that goes into early childhood that people don't think about. But the most important thing I want to leave all of you with is how important all of you are. First of all, we know we have a problem in our community when this room is not full. So my charge to all of you is, who are you going to share this information with? Are you going to ask Dr. Rose for a copy of her slides and information so that you can share that same information with other people? It is not easy to get the unenrolled enrolled. It's very hard. I literally stalk families walking down the street at St. Mark. And hey, where's your child enrolled? Can I help you get in the program? There's a stigma around enrolling our children and thinking that it's a daycare, that maybe it's not needed, and also that some harm might happen to their child. Now, while those things are very real things to consider, there's a lot of ways you can help and support adults in making an informed choice about where they're going to enroll their children so that they know it's going to meet their child's needs. And it takes all of us stepping outside of our comfort zone and doing things different. And it is not the normal just, hey, Richardson's enrolling now, is not going to work with some of those in our community that need the services the most. And so my challenge to all of you is, what are you going to do to help ensure that all of our children at least try to get in the program? We know we do not currently have enough quality seats. There are still many programs in our community that need support in making quality improvements, but we're on the road to doing that. But it also takes, as you see opportunities for us to work on dedicated funding for early childhood, we're going to need your support, whatever that might be. Ask the questions, challenge us if it's not going to be a smart initiative, but it's a whole lot of fundraising that takes place to make early childhood happen, and that's, to me, just not acceptable.
Thank you for that. Anyone have a quick question that they would like to ask of either one of the panelists? No? Where's the one? Question? No? Okay, we'll move on to the next, since we are a little bit behind, we'll move on to the next segment, which is about Kansas City Public Schools' response and what we're trying to accomplish. We have two panelists that will be joining us, and I could ask them maybe to move up to the seats up top. First is our interim superintendent, Mr. Al Tunis, who many of you know and love. And quite frankly, the reason why I'm at the district is because he gave a call and said, we're ready to do some great things at KCPS. We'd like you to come over. And also joining Mr. Tunis is someone that I think most of you may know as well, Ms. Candace Cheatham, who is leading leading one of our early learning programs, the Parents to Teachers program. He's been a child advocate for 20 plus years in Kansas City, formerly with Link, and a real superstar. So I will turn it over to the both of you. Mr. Tunis, you will start off.
Well, thank you, Mr. Kitsy. I appreciate it, and I too want to agree with Deidre in that what we need to do in order to fill this room and to continue this conversation, I think, is critical, not just for the future of our children, but the future of our community as well. This is a community-wide issue, and it's one that I think that we all need to engage. And certainly appreciate our Board of Education who had the foresight to create the series of forums so that we can begin this conversation within our community. You know, Jerry indicated that he was able to be employed with the Kansas City Public Schools shortly after I came to the district back in 2011. And I say that because I think it's really important to see where our district has been really in the last 2 to 3 years, or 3 to 4 years. Jerry has done a remarkable job. And I say that in all sincerity. When I came to the district, our program needed attention. And Head Start, Mid-America Regional Council was very concerned on the delivery of our program and what we were providing to our community. And we went to what we thought was the best, and we brought Jerry in. We've had to make some tough decisions over the last 4 years, but we are well on our way to meeting the needs or serving the needs of our community. And Jerry has done an outstanding job surrounding himself with competent, quality people that are serving our children, and I'm very, very proud of the accomplishments that we've made during that 4-year period. So we've rebuilt a lot, and we've centered it around a variety of programs that allow us to move forward. And we started with a focus on our Head Start program, working directly with the Mid-America Regional Council and serving our students for those and serving those families that need it the most. And there's a phrase that we use based on the philosophy of our Head Start program, which is simple. We don't just enroll the child, we enroll the whole family. And that is so important. It's so important because as young parents, the young parent is our children's first teacher. It's not when they come and they're 3-year-old and they come to Richardson or other facilities just like this. It's when they're born and their first teacher is their parent. And so we want to be able to provide the support that's necessary for our young families to be able to direct and guide their children and their family to help them as they grow and prepare for school. And I think that another way that we do that is through schools just like this, our community schools, and what we have. Because in this community school and what we have at Woodland, our Head Start program is housed in both of those locations, but not just for classrooms for our students, but also community-wide services for the family as well. And so it's a one-stop shop where you can come to these schools and to our locations and be served not just for your child in pre-K services, but also the family and the family needs as well. We think that that's a great service that we can provide for our families in our community. Well, Head Start alone doesn't cut it. We serve approximately 400 students in 20 classrooms across the district, but that doesn't serve the need. We talk a little bit about the different agencies and what's available for our students. 20 classrooms serves 400 students. We have about 6,000 3- and 4-year-olds in Kansas City that need a quality pre-K program. And so we look at other sources of revenue that help us offset those costs. MPP, the Missouri Preschool Program, is one of those. Our Early Childhood Program is another one of those. And we also offer here at KCPS a Montessori program in 2 of our elementary schools as well. So in all, of those 6,000 students that we're referring to, we serve approximately 1,200 students in what we believe to be a quality pre-K program. And that's very, very important to us. And one of the other things that we're doing is we expand the services that we provide to our community and to the families is our Parents as Teachers program. And Candace is going to talk about that because, again, Jerry's been doing his job very, very well, and he's gone after the very, very best and brought Candace to our district to provide the service that we have for all of our students. Now, one of the areas of deficiencies that we know we have, now obviously there's a big gap between 1,200 and 6,000, and there are other agencies that provide services, but we fall far short of what's necessary to meet the need in our community. Well, one of the things that we do is offer for families a before and after care program. Link has been our provider. If you have children in other elementary schools, Link will provide services before and after school, and they're able to obtain outside resources to be able to provide that service. Unfortunately, Link doesn't have that luxury as it relates to our pre-K program, our 3- and 4-year-olds. They are not eligible for that level of funding, and therefore that level of service is very, very costly to the district, and it's a cost that we're looking at how we can better serve the community so we can divert school dollars into school education purposes and not before and after care programs. To put it in perspective for you, for those classrooms, it's approximately a $20,000 cost to offer a before and after care program per classroom. And if you multiply that times the 54 classrooms that we have available and that we're offering in our school district, we're talking a little over $1 million a year just for before and after care program that doesn't tie back to the actual academic program that we're offering. So it's extremely expensive, and it's something that we monitor very, very closely, and we're constantly looking at ways of how we can best serve the needs of our community and have the appropriate resources to be able to do that. I think the next segment we're going to be able to focus a little bit about where we go from here and how we'll be able to address some of those costs. But I would like to take most of the time, or ask Candace to take most of our time to talk a little bit about what she's been creating for our community. Again, as I indicated, Jerry was successful in recruiting and bringing in the best, and I think you'll be able to see that from her comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the kind accolades, but the proof will be in the pudding. I truly believe that we have to make sure that our works speak as loudly as our words, and we are committed to parents as teachers. And I'll start off with something that my grandbaby said to me. She says, in 1900s, Granny, and I was back in 1988, the Kansas City, Missouri School District received an award from President Carter for having the best early childhood initiative in the United States of America. Back in 1989, Parents as Teachers in the Kansas City, Missouri School District was the largest Parents as Teachers initiative in the state, in the nation, and internationally. Now, something happened, and we could spend lots of time discussing what those things are that happened, but what we do know is that if it was done once, it could be done again. We could bring Parents as Teachers, our early childhood initiatives, back to where it was. Now, we may not be able to get Carter to come back and give us an award, but there will be a president out there that can say, look at what Kansas City's doing. Back in 1999, I had the opportunity to spend time with Jeffrey Canada. What Jeffrey Canada is doing in New York City is nothing different than what we're doing at Woodland Elementary School. We just didn't write the book Fists, Knives, and Guns, which was a very good book. So Jerry's a very good writer, so maybe we'll get a book out of him on how we transitioned to Kansas City. When we look at what Parents as Teachers meant to Mildred Winters, knowing that it started in the state of Missouri. In the state of Missouri, and Independence was the first. Kansas City was the second. Directed by a woman by the name of Pat Tennyson at 110 pounds wet. This woman started 12 centers that represented every part of the metropolitan community with along Sue Russell in Independence. this can be done too. We are partnering with our parent educators that are no longer in our district, because guess what? We know that our families are transient. We know that people move quite frequently. We have established relationships with our center, Hickman Mills, and our Raytown parent educators, so that parents don't get lost in the loop. Because one of us says, you're across the street from our boundary. You're not on the right side of town. It doesn't matter. We will render services to those families too. I've had the good fortune to bring on 2 new team members. We're now up to 10 team members. Back in 1989 and 1999, there were 54 parent educators doing what we're doing as 10 people. That's a good thing to do, but you will lose staff quickly if they become burnout in trying to do those types of things at that magnitude. We also have the good fortune of knowing the history of parents as teachers. Just as teachers said that it started in early childhood, we have the opportunity to cultivate a relationship with parents prior to those parents coming into the school building. We have the opportunity to set the stage that if I understand what a dial 4 is, then I now understand why I've got to prepare for the math. If I understand that I have to have the immunizations done, I'll understand that maybe my child shouldn't miss school because they don't have their immunization, because they would have had the experiences in parents as teachers. We also have the opportunity to establish a rapport. A rapport with the parent educators is imperative to the success of the district. If they have a good rapport with the parent educator, they're more likely to stay within the district. The district, like no other time, is now in competition. We do have competition. When I was with the district previously, there was no competition. We were in it. But competition doesn't have to be a negative thing. It can be a catalyst to move us to start looking at ourselves and our work differently. That it can be a catalyst to move us to looking at, guess what? If they can do it, we can do it better. Collectively, we can make a difference in this community. For those of us that are products of the Kansas City, Missouri School District, we know what it was. We know what it can be. We know the good, the bad, the indifferent. I personally work with 14 different superintendents just in this school district, where in suburban school districts like Center, we had the same I think Bob Barton was there when they laid the cornerstone, and he just left. I do think Marge Williams and Hickman Mills was there for over 15 to 20 years. We've had transition, but one thing hasn't changed. Those of us that live here, live here. Those of us that enjoy being in this community and loving this community will be here. Those of us that see the change that is transpiring in neighborhoods where we really thought there would be no change. I am really surprised at some of our neighborhood associations and how you can feel at peace at night. We know what our children go through in the schools when we make the decision, you know, I'm not getting out of bed and getting on the floor tonight, they're just gonna shoot, they just gonna shoot. But if that happens to an adult, and they have difficulty going to work the next morning because they are making those decisions, then we should be cognitive of what our students are going through as they come to school, because we've had the skill sets to help us deal with trauma. Our children have it. Our social, emotional components of our parents as teachers could make the difference for our children to be more well-rounded with how to handle stress. The streets are different now. There were streets when I was Mr. Irving, Miss Rosa James, others in the community, Miss Park, those of us that were able to navigate the community as children and still feel safe. Our children deserve that again. And guess what we have? We have schools. And in those schools and in those small communities can penetrate out to the larger community, that Kansas City Public Schools is a good place to be, that you can get a quality education. But I would like to address us as adults. And the question was asked, why isn't the room filled? And sometimes we have to look at ourselves Have we been as courteous as we possibly could be? Have we had conversations in the community that are positive about the Kansas City, Missouri School District? Now, I'm getting in trouble for saying this, but I was at Macy's the other morning, and you want to know what's going on in the community, go to Macy's on Saturday mornings, and on Tuesday, go to the corner restaurants. You will hear it all. But I had to interrupt the conversation that was going on at the table behind me because it was derogatory about their own community in which they reside. If we, as employees of the district, don't start having more positive conversations about the customers in which we serve, the community in which we reside, we're not going to see the transition that we would like to see. We can spend lots of money, but every problem is not solved by money. The key word for parents as teachers is rapport building. We must start reestablishing rapport with each other internally, externally, and as we move forward in this initiative to change our community to be what it needs to be. It might not necessarily be what we say to others outside, but what we say inside. Are our children valuable enough for us to sacrifice ourselves to do what we need to do for our community? Are our children valuable enough? And when I say our children, I'm talking about all of the children. Because our initiative with parents as teachers is working with Buford Library on large group, and we're also working with Waldo on large group. Because one thing I've learned from little kids is that these little people will play with whomever has the ball. If you got the jump rope, you are my friend. And we as adults don't do that. We have moved to be territorial. We have set up class systems that don't necessarily need to exist. And our goal for parents as teachers is to take parents as teachers back to the future, back to 1998, where presidents of this country will recognize the Early Childhood Initiative of the Kansas City, Missouri School District, where we will receive awards. But the greatest reward will be is that we as adults will model for our children how to work together collectively to make Kansas City the city that it should be.
I think we should let Candace just keep talking. I'm pumped now. Any questions for our panelists on this section? Yes.
So I would like to ask, tell us how you find families or parents as teachers. Where do you encounter families, and what's the best way for us as a community to bring families together with kids and their home?
Two things, and part of the team will be passing out the new flyers that we have had the opportunity to develop. We are working with non-traditional partners. Many times we negotiate among each other. It will be Family Conservancy and Educare. We respect each other's area and their efforts and their work, but we're also working with Rediscover, which is a treatment facility. We're also working with Job Corps, which has 16 teenage parents that we've just started working with. We're also working with the library system, which we had a relationship, but that relationship was not continued in the way that it probably should be. And our word is everything right now. I do believe we have one opportunity to make it right. When people have not been able to rely on consistency, yeah, we'll be there on Tuesday. I'll change my mind. No, we are doing MOUs where we have memorandum of understanding so that when we enter into these venues, Connection for Success, when we enter into those venues, they know we're coming and they know we're coming. So that the integrity of the program is established where we can even move forward. We're working with one of the correctional systems that when they're released from that facility, if they're released with a child under the age of 5, we then have the information to go out and do home visits and invite them to that piece. Your question, Patty, was how can the community help? One, we've got to help ourselves. We've got to operate in integrity. When we say we're going to be somewhere, we be there. We're going to operate in integrity in that we follow the curriculum, but also make sure that we give the families everything that they're required to have. That's our responsibility. So as we move forward and increase our staffing, that to me, I would rather go deep and go well than to go wide and go messy. So right now, many of the things that we were asked to do by many of our partners, we're inhibited from doing because we just don't have the manpower to make that happen on the ground. But if you could share the information with individuals, it was a major process that Jerry helped to make happen. The flyers that we were passing out didn't meet the standards. For those of you that know, I come from Lincoln. Say Mr. Brian over there is the sharpest communications guy on the planet. And yes, Sean, if I could steal him, I will. And but two things that you learn in the process of doing the work. When you hand out information that is poorly organized, it is a reflection on your organization. When it's been copied 17 times and you can barely clearly see, is that an ad or is that a sign? That is reflective of how you're viewed in the community. So we don't want to be labeled as half-steppers in the process. So as we move forward, we will be making sure that literature is crisp and clean, that we are neat and in order as we go out, because what we're doing on the ground has a reflection on what they do at 1211.
So you're having yard sign?
We have a yard sign.
Yes.
No sign we can read.
Thank you, Ms. Rosa James. We'll work on that. No, ma'am, we don't at the present time. We don't. Oh. I have two approaches. One, we have been diligently working on several grants that will be made available to us. So we're prayerful and hopeful whichever space. What I would like to see is for us to probably have 10 centers. But I will say this, I don't want them if they're not up to par. I would rather go deep and it be authentic and true than to just say, we've got 10 people, but 20, 50 people, but we're not doing what we're charged to do. The other part of that is in the Parents as Teachers curriculum, there is a piece called Connection. That's where you can do the large groups. That's why we are facilitating different large groups throughout the community so that we can tap the larger amount of participants, but still drill deep in those who prefer to have the one-on-one, the in-home visits in the way that they would like to. So we'll go large, but then we'll penetrate deeply in the home visit part. And we're able to do that today. Yes, ma'am. Earlier on, the issues were about my predecessor. I went in Jerry's office, and I told him about a couple of weeks ago, the issues won't be about my predecessor anymore. They'll be about me, because I don't ask anyone to do anything that I don't do myself. So we're going to rock it out because we love Kansas City, and we love the Kansas City Public School District.
We're gonna end on that one. Candace is going to be stepping down, and we're going to ask Paul to step up and join the students to talk about where we go in the future. Happy to introduce Mr. Paul. He is serving the Chamber of Commerce's Big 5 initiative, and officially he is the Vice President of Strategic Initiatives at the Greater Kansas City Chamber of Commerce. Just to make sure everyone understands what that means, to have the Chamber of Commerce choose as one of its top 5 initiatives in Kansas City early learning, early childhood education. use this guy's terms, but it's you. That makes the business community stand behind what we're trying to accomplish as a school. And so to make that a larger issue for the area is just a remarkable achievement for the city, and we're going to benefit from that experience. Tony, you got the
Thank you, Jerry. We on that? Okay. Thanks, Jerry. What Jerry did not say is the only true qualification I have to be sitting in front of you today to talk about early learning is that I have at home really my own early learning center. I have an 8-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 9-month-old waiting for me when I get home. And I can assure you, though I've never heard the term until tonight, until Dr. Ross said tonight, inhibitionary control, there are some issues with that at the Early Learning Center I return to when I'm done here tonight. As Jerry said, one of these things is not like the other. I am not an education expert. Deirdre said that about herself, but she's just being modest. I truly am not an education expert, and I am not representing an organization made up of education experts. But I am a convert, and I have been converted on this issue, as has my organization, in part by some of the people in this room. But for those who've not been a part of that process, I really have been educated about education, as has the Chamber over the last 2 years. When we announced this, it's a big five idea, and in the months leading up to it, it became abundantly clear to us a few simple facts about early childhood education. First, in the 21st century, the communities that grow the strongest are going to be those that are the healthiest and those that have strong learning systems. And systems is an important word, and I think that's a little bit of what Al and I are going to talk about in terms of going forward. But that system starts at birth and it ends at death. And I really mean that sincerely. If you all have not ever read a paper that is now probably 15 or 20 years old called The Early Catastrophe, it articulates this point and how important early childhood education is in a way that's understandable to someone like me, someone who is not schooled in early childhood education the way Dr. Ross is. By age 3, children from welfare level income families have experienced 30 million fewer words than their professional level income peers. So we're not even talking about someone who's been in kindergarten yet. We're talking about just a 3-year-old who's experienced 30 million fewer words. And what this study showed is the lasting impact that those different environmental experiences have on kids, not just in their educational careers, but throughout life. And when you look at the studies that are done about kindergarten readiness, which is really the focus of our Big Five idea, what you learn is the impact of early childhood education extends far beyond the classroom, into health, into job prospects throughout life, into so many things. Really, there almost isn't anything good that we don't want to have happen in someone's life that is positively impacted by high-quality early childhood education. That's what the Chamber sees in this. If we're going to grow, if we're going to make Kansas City the best place to live, work, start, and grow business, that's what we're aiming to do at the Chamber, we know we have to have an educated workforce to do it. But there's more to it than that. If a kindergarten teacher, and I know we've got a couple in the room, and I bet they can attest that this is actually true, and I've heard this from other kindergarten teachers, if they can tell you within the first 20 minutes of a child's first day of kindergarten, that child's prospects of going to college, there's something not right about that fact. And we at the Chamber recognize it. And it's a workforce issue for us, to be sure, but it's also just a social justice issue. It's a health issue. It's an issue that bleeds into so many other things that are happening in greater Kansas City that we know it must change. And I think that's really what we're going to talk about now is how we can see that will change. And what I see in my 2 years of education on this issue goes back to that word I mentioned earlier, which is a system. And that system isn't just the public school district, and it isn't just KCPS, to be sure. We're the regional chamber. We see this issue on both sides of the state line, both sides of the river.
we have to recognize that there are different solutions for different kids, and there are different solutions for different kids at different ages. And as the parent of an 8-year-old, 6-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 9-month-old, I can tell you, same house, same parents, at least the same attempt to have the same educational experience, totally different kids. They learn in completely different ways, and the teachers in this room know that there is no single child that learns just like another child. And it's going to take a system that recognizes that in order to do what we want to do with the Chamber, which is to try and get every child ready for kindergarten by that first day, and what the district wants to do, which is to take that baton and take it through to someone's 18th birthday, their graduation from college, and hand it off to a 4-year or 2-year institution. We have looked at this in a variety of ways, but that system is going to be built if we have a network of champions talking about early childhood education at every opportunity. As I said, I'm a convert, so I didn't know anything about the early catastrophe and the 30 million word gap and the impact of early childhood education until folks like Jared Kitsy taught me that. What we need to do is convert more people like me. We're dedicated to doing that at the Chamber. We need to talk about it. We need to write about it. We need to scream it from the mountaintops until everybody who is like me understands that right now, you could pretty much tell a kid's future on their first day of kindergarten. And that's not right, it's not fair, it's not the way we want Kansas City, it's not the way we want this district to be. So my charge to you, and we'll talk a little bit, I think, a bit about some of the specifics of the system, is go out and be a champion and talk about this issue. I know the folks in this room probably know this issue better than I do, but we need to be advocates, we need to be talking to people about it, we need to be converting more folks in this community. Because there's going to be a day that comes when we talk about how we build that system, and if we're going to build a system, this issue for greater Kansas City, by my back of the envelope math, is roughly $1 billion a year problem. If you wanted to put every child in greater Kansas City in high quality early learning systems from their date of their birth until they were entering kindergarten, it's roughly $1 billion a year. And I'm looking, but I have not found anyone that has $1 billion to give to this issue every year forever. Well, someday we're going to be calling on the people of this community to help find a way to get that $1 billion. And in order to do it, we have to have them understand this issue. So with that, I'll turn it over to Al to talk some more.
Thanks, Scott. You know, we talked a little bit earlier in the second segment about the gap, and the gap in terms of the number of students that need to be served in our community. KCPS is addressing and serving 1,200 children in a gap where there are 6,000 in our community that need to be served. Now, there are other centers, there are other agencies that are available and providing quality service as well as the school district, but the gap continues to exist. And like so many issues that we face in public education, we know that everything comes with a cost. And it was earlier today that Board Member Lewis and I were having a conversation, and we were talking about there always seems to be some kind of a financial crisis in public education. And as we continue to look and try to find ways to address the needs, to meet those needs in pre-K education, this is a conversation that is existing across the country. And we've heard so many stories about what the United States isn't doing as it serves its pre-K population compared to other countries in this world. And it's almost shameful that we're in that position, and we are working diligently to try to find strategies that will allow us to address those needs. Now, I will tell you that there have been a number of organizations, there have been a number of us in this room that have traveled across the country to try to find ways to address this financial crisis that faces all of us in public education for 3- and 4-year-old pre-K program. And I would tell you that in a visit that we made to Denver, Colorado, it required and it took a sales tax. It took that sales tax multiple times before it was approved by the voters in the city of Denver. And once it's been approved, then a program, a system was established, I think as Scott has indicated, to provide quality seats for the children in Denver, the 3 and 4-year-olds in Denver, to best address the needs of pre-K education. Pre-K education to help our children prepare for kindergarten, prepare for school. So a sales tax was used in Denver, and it took time to get to that point. If you happen to walk through the halls of Jefferson City, there are conversations going on every day about funding pre-K education. I will tell you that right now, currently, there is approval, law that was passed about a year or maybe 2 years ago that funded, not completely funded, but funded an element of pre-K education for those school districts that were unaccredited or provisionally accredited. We'll have the opportunity to seek and receive some of those resources this year. Approximately $1.4 million will be available to help offset some of those costs. But that is a far cry from the $10 million that we're currently spending in our pre-K program right now. And so, again, trying to describe what that gap is. About 4 years ago, the Board of Education asked for an early learning commission to be established where business leaders and community leaders, and civic leaders, philanthropic leaders, religious leaders came together to work on evaluating and taking a look at a program of how we can come together as a community. Scott talks about both sides of the state line. We focus a lot on Kansas City, Missouri, and our school district. But I think this is an issue that affects both sides of the state line, and we've been talking to those business leaders and community leaders and philanthropic leaders to help us come up with a program that would enable us to do that. And so the Early Learning Commission has been working for those 4 years to develop a system, put a system in place to be able to provide the resources in order for us to do that. But I think, as Scott has said, one of the things that we have to do is to communicate. We have to spread the word. We have to have the support of our community. Our community needs to be converted, like Scott was, to support a pre-K initiative. As all of us, or as most of us in the room know, when we were educated, we went to our public school or to our school, and it was a K-12 school. Service was provided to kindergarten through 12th grade. Higher ed went beyond after graduation. There wasn't much consideration given prior to that time. Many of our suburban districts, Scott and I were in a meeting earlier today with superintendents from all over the Kansas City metropolitan area, and each one of them talked about how they're addressing their gap. And many of them have a gap. They're using federal funds to help offset and divert costs. Many of them are passing the bill on to the parent, to the family. The cost of the program is incurred and borne by the family in order to pay tuition and make sure that's covered. Our program, we're very, very fortunate that we're able to provide these programs for our community, with the exception of what we have at Hale Cook and in our Montessori program, where we have a graduated scale, and so it's subsidized, but the district, but parents are participating in those particular programs. So some of our neighboring districts are addressing their gap by asking for tuition payments. And so as we continue to take a look at that, in order for us to move forward, whether it's through the state legislature, whether it's through a sales tax like Denver, or whether it's through a school levy that could be considered for the purpose of pre-K education, it's going to require communication and support of our community, because it will take a vote of the people in order to allocate the resources that are necessary to generate the kind of income to support. We weren't thinking about necessarily getting $1 billion, but something far less than that would certainly go a long way to help us serve some of the gap between our 1,200 and our 6,000 students that we serve.
Questions for our guests? No, hearing none. Okay, well, I know we're pressed for time, and so Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. We are going to have a closing, and this is a fun part for me because I get to introduce the person who's going to do the close. Good conversation tonight. A lot of information, a lot of important information about what makes a system, what makes a quality program, what makes a quality seat. Parents are our child's first teacher, and there's a partnership between parents and the teachers in our program. When I first got here, as I went through the classrooms, you were able to recognize really fairly quickly. There are some teachers that have tremendous skills, other teachers that are just out of school and they're learning the craft. But there's something unique about some teachers that makes them very, very special. And that's that they have a certain disposition towards children, a certain love for children, a certain patience, unbelievable patience. I could never do it. But Ms. Cheryl Fisher, who's going to come up and do our welcome, is one of those people. A tremendous educator and a quality person. Yep. Thrilled to have her.
Can everyone hear me? I am very loud. Can you hear me? Okay. You say that you love children and are concerned they learn today. As am I. That's why I'm providing a variety of kinds of play. You're asking, what's the value of having children play? Your daughter's creating a tower. She may be a builder someday. You're asking me the value of blocks and sand and clay. Your children are solving problems. They will use that skill every day. You're saying that you don't want your son to play in that sissy way. He's learning to color a doll. He may be a father someday. You're questioning the learning centers. They just look like useless play. But your children are making choices. They'll be on their own someday. You're worried your children aren't learning, and later they'll have to pay. They're learning a pattern of learning, so they'll be learners always. But I really don't have to read what my name is. But my name is Cheryl Fisher, and I am a teacher here at Richardson, and I have close to 30 years of experience in early childhood. It's something that I am passionate about. It's something that I firmly believe in, and it's definitely not about the money. When I am 54 years old, and I knew as a preteen that I wanted to work with children in some form of capacity. I grew up in a church, and it made my mother so nervous because I had to hold everybody's child in church. And my mother, oh, my baby don't have a lot of kids. At a young age, that's what she was worried about. But it's just something about the little ones that has truly stuck with me. And the poem I just read by Lori Monopoly speaks of the challenges, the fears, and the questions we often face as educators and the community about how children learn. And I believe that's why this forum is so important. And we do need to fill seats. But I think if educators, community, and families really understood the value of play, I think they would get it. So when they walk in the classroom and they see their kids out the room just playing, it's so much more than that. Children are learning. Some of them do not know that they're learning. The rewards are very great. Every couple of years, I go to Walmart on 135th Street, and it's like clockwork. I run into this mother. I had her daughter over 20 years ago. Her daughter graduated top of her class at Center High School. Then she met a little boy 20 plus years ago. Till this day, they are best friends. She went on to school, to college to study law. He went to college and he's in the criminal justice system. So Head Start does make an impact, and I am so proud to be part of it.
teachers, the Head Start teachers, we weren't the teachers. We weren't the bus monitors. We did the recruiting. We walked the streets. We pound the doors. So it sounds like maybe we need to go back to the old-fashioned way. And it worked. I mean, it was nothing to go in the store and see a child and say, oh, how old is that child? And give them information. But unfortunately, you know, you walk up to somebody and say, oh, what's your child's name? Okay, do you stand and listen or do you run the opposite direction? Seriously. So this evening, I want to express my gratitude to everyone who participated in the forum this evening. To Dr. Giovanna Ross and Dr. Deidre. Dr. Deidre Anderson for sharing their insights about nurturing young minds. Al Tunis and Candace Cheatham for unpacking the complicated process of strengthening our early childhood education program. Scott Hall and Mr. Tunis for creating a roadmap extending our web of early learning support across the entire Kansas City public school community. Melissa Robertson and Patty Manchula and the entire Kansas City Public School Board of Directors for their vision and work, to make this forum possible, and for their incredible commitments as volunteers and leaders. And I'm almost done. So I just want to leave you with a little food for thought. As educators, we may disagree on some things, but I have seen firsthand what happens to a child given the right amount of attention and support. They become our foundation for the community. And I have also seen what happens when children and families do not have access to the support and the education they need. That means we cannot leave here merely with good feelings about early learning. We have to leave here with the momentum to take the next step forward to the vision of high quality, supportive early education for every single child in Kansas City. And this is my personal request to everyone in here to take that next step to help us move in a direction, a positive direction. No single person can make this dream a reality. It will take all of them. It will take the whole community to make this a reality for all families. Thank you.
I'm not going to try and follow that. We are done for the evening. Thank you for being here. Have a safe trip home. What?
I'm going to leave very quick. Are you guys fired up and ready to go? I'm fired up and ready to go. There's not much more to be said. Again, thank you all for coming. Again, please give our panelists another resounding applause. We really, really appreciate you. As I was observing a lot of the richness in this building, along with Skylar, we were walking around together earlier, there was a quote on the wall that said, fair is not everyone getting the same thing, but fairness is everyone getting what they need. And that's what Team KCPS is all about. That's what our pre-K through 12 education is all about. I want to acknowledge a couple of people in the room. One, John Heil is here, former KCPS board chair, and top 40 under 40 for Ingram. So congratulations, my friend. Also, again, I want to underscore Patty Manser and her committee for really having the vision and the leadership and the thoughtfulness to do this. We really appreciate you and all of the school board members and the KCPS team and family, Mr. Tunis and your team, Mr. Pixie. We really, really appreciate all of you. So you, again, a lot has been shared, but we want to make sure that you are charged to take the next step, as Ms. Cheryl so eloquently said. There were some comments about the room not being full, but I come from a place where there's 2 or 3 gathered. We can make a difference and we can make a change, right? So let's make sure
that we go forward and we move forward with this message that quality education, pre-K, early learning is so extremely important, and we need you at the solution table. We need you to help come up with solutions to make sure that the sister back there said, well, how much money do you need? I love that. Like, what do we need to do to move this forward? And we want to invite you back to the table to talk more about that, and just please stay tuned to what we're doing. Thank you. Have a great evening.